have an update to the Amtrak derailment story that took place on Tuesday night of this week. It turns out that the engineer that was on the train, Brandon Bastian, sped up for a full minute prior to the train getting derailed at a sharp curve in Philadelphia. Now, there were 238 passengers on that train. 8 of them died as a result of that derailment, and more than 200 of them did suffer from injuries. Some of them were in critical condition as a result. Now, the new information really makes one wonder what was going through his mind. He claims that he has no recollection whatsoever of the entire event. However, according to black box information, the Amtrak train 188 began accelerating a minute before it crashed, speeding from 70 miles per hour to 106 miles per hour before the engineer put on the brakes. Now, at the moment that he put on the brakes, the speed went down to about 102 miles per hour. But just keep in mind that at that particular curve, the speed limit is 50 miles per hour. So he was going extremely fast. Now, they broke it down a little more in terms of the time and the speed, and I want to give you that information. At 65 seconds before the recording ended, the train speed rose above 70 miles per hour. 43 seconds before, its speed exceeded 80 miles per hour. 31 seconds before, its speed passed 90 miles per hour. And 60 seconds before, its speed was at 100 miles per hour.
Wow, it actually has impressive acceleration that it was able to make those changes in 6 or 10
so
seconds.
So quickly, especially considering how many cars were on that train. So right now, they're not drawing any conclusions based on the information that they have. This investigation is ongoing. And of course, Brandon Bastian is kind of trying to get over the traumatic events that just occurred before speaking to authorities and participating in the investigation. But he did hand over blood samples to see whether or not he was intoxicated at the time of this accident. And he also did turn in his cell phone, I guess, to see whether or not he was distracted in any way prior to the derailment.
Yeah.
Now, some people have made the observation or assertion that sometimes the guys who drive trains like that, they buy burner phones so they can, if something happens, it's a burner, they just throw it away. And I was listening to an expert say that they should look around the crash site for a burner phone that maybe that guy was using. But if they find it, how are they going to know it's his anyways? If it's maybe his fingerprints will be on it, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe. That's a really, I hadn't heard that, so that's a really interesting twist to the story.
Yeah, and so the whole thing with him not remembering anything, I mean, he could be lying. That's entirely possible. He could have sustained an injury in the crash that caused him to not be able to remember.
They said that he was concussed.
Concussed, okay. And it's also possible that something happened to him medically before the accident that maybe caused him to speed up the train and not realize it, and also interfered with his memory. Yeah. We have no ability to determine which of those three is true or even likely. But all three of them could have led to the same.
It sounds to me like when you reading that about how fast it accelerated and accelerated right before he went into the curve, it doesn't make sense that he would do it on purpose. So I was like, I thought, well, maybe the guy had a heart attack and he fell into it, but it turns out he didn't have the heart attack.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe he got lightheaded and passed out, and that's why he doesn't remember the crash. Who knows what happened? I don't think he did it on purpose. That's just my gut feeling.
It's just strange because he did accelerate a full minute prior to the curve, and I don't believe for a second that he didn't expect the curve. In fact, according to an investigator, part of their testing to become an engineer on these trains is to become qualified, is to know every speed restriction, and you're supposed to know the path that you're going. It's not like it was the first time that he was on that train in that path.
It does seem weird that it's up to them. That it's up to a human. That you can't be exceeding a speed. Like, I know you could take this really far, but especially for a train where everybody that's on the train, other than the person controlling the speed, has no control over the speed. Why is a human moving a lever? It should be computer controlled. And I know that there's all the safety equipment that we're probably going to talk about that was set to go into effect. But it's 2015, and a person is literally moving a lever to control the speed of something carrying hundreds of people?
Yeah, it is very strange, but I think that that's actually the biggest part of the story that hasn't been addressed enough. So let's get into that a little bit. So the National Transportation Safety Board, which is investigating this situation, Also talked a little bit about how they were supposed to have certain safeguards in place to prevent an engineer from speeding, especially when it comes to a sharp curve like that. And according to Robert Sumwalt, he is an NTSB board member, he says a system to automatically cap speed on passenger trains, known as positive train control, was not installed on the section of track. Had it been, this accident would not have occurred. So let me explain to you how that works. It basically uses like a wireless signal in order to detect a train that's going too fast. And if it is going fast, it can automatically slow down that train's speed. Now, in order to do that, you need access to the airwaves. And that has been a little challenging for Amtrak, to say the least. So Amtrak had for years failed to acquire adequate rights to broadcast communication signals through the public airwaves. Without these so-called spectrum rights, Amtrak's trains could not communicate with the electronic brains of the safety system, preventing its use along key stretches of track. This lack of spectrum had become the most serious challenge in the railroad's efforts to deploy the safety equipment more broadly, Amtrak's watchdog warned. Now, there were a number of different things that made this a challenge. First of all, you need to get FCC approval, and right now there are many different entities that are kind of competing for the same airwaves. And at the same time, Amtrak has been dealing with budget cuts, and so it makes it a little more difficult to fight for those airwaves when you don't have the proper funding to do so.
Yeah, I mean, we have to acknowledge none of us are engineers. You know, we don't understand what goes into the electronics of a train. It seems to me like this is a solution, I guess. I don't understand why they don't just have something GPS tracking the train, and they know that on this section of the track, this is the speed you're supposed to be going. On this section, this speed, rather than having like a last chance detector of trains that are going too fast. You're running. It's not like they have to do a different track every day between. Oh, and now we're going to go between these trees, and then it's the same track every day. How is there not a program that controls its speed the entire way?
Like
there's not traffic.
Like a roller coaster at a theme park.
Exactly.
Is there a guy with?
They don't slow it down if it's going too fast at the top of the. They know it's always going to end up there.
Yeah.
It should be going the same speed every single time. I'm sure that I'm missing something, but to an outsider, this is why people are so horrified by this sort of thing. A train should be more easily controlled than a car or a plane.
Why isn't there a governor on the train that would, because you can put a governor on a car pretty easily, rental places do sometimes, that won't let a car go past a certain amount of RPMs. So why couldn't they put a governor on a train, a passenger train, that wouldn't let it go past a certain speed? I don't understand.
I don't really know the answer to all those questions, but what I do always find interesting is whenever you have a tragedy like this where people lose their lives, people always ask the same questions, including politicians and officials. The same question of why weren't there safeguards in place to prevent this from happening? And it always goes back to the money.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so if you're going to continuously cut funding for certain things, then it's going to be a lot harder for them to spend what they have on certain safety protocols. Now, I think that should be a priority, but obviously they had a really difficult time fighting for FCC approval of these airwaves in order to make the safety system workable.
Yeah.
So,
One time, speaking about putting governors on there, one time I heard the Amtrak, they put Governor Chris Christie on one. It slowed it down way too much.